The UK government is a big spender that absolutely loves to buy things, but never has enough money for it all. So what does it do? It borrows money from others to cover the costs. But like most things, there's a catch. It has to pay back the money with extra cash on top, basically a fancy interest fee. Now, why does the government resort to borrowing in the first place? Well, most of the money that it acquires comes from us, paying our taxes. If you're employed, you'll notice this on your payslip, where you see this big chunk of your hard-earned money deducted from your earnings going to the tax person. That's how the government gets their dough. But sometimes the government spends more than it collects from taxes. In those moments, it has to make some very tough choices. Either collecting more taxes from us, I don't like the sound of that, or spending on less cool stuff, or borrowing more money. When you have a government that juggles around £1 trillion every year, it needs to be very smart with its cash. For instance, if the government suddenly raises taxes, we might have less money in our pockets to treat ourselves, and businesses will struggle to make any money. And you know what less profit means for companies? Yes, you've guessed it, there's less cash to give to the government in taxes. So it's a never-ending cycle of money moves. The government loves to splurge, but can't always foot the bill, so it looks to us to help. And if we're feeling the financial squeeze, everyone in the money game feels it too. So next time you see governments talking about spending and taxes, just remember, it's all a big money dance with twists and turns. You know that friend you have who always borrows money but insists it's for something really important? Well, that's what our government is like. They take loans to jazz up the economy or build fancy stuff like new railways, roads and hospitals. So while construction workers sweat it out and build these projects, the government is busy opening its wallets for both daily expenses and those massive undertakings, like they're on a never-ending shopping spree. So the question is, how do governments borrow money? In one word, bonds. Not James, just bonds. Think of a bond as a promise to pay back money in the future, but with some interest to sweeten the deal. The government sells these promises and voila, they've got cash. Now in the UK, as we're quite posh, these bonds are called gilts, but that's because they're considered even super safe. Financial big shots like pension funds, banks and investment funds, well, they snap these up like hotcakes. But wait, it gets even fancier. The Bank of England sometimes joins the party by buying loads of these gilts to keep the economy ticking over through something called quantitative easing. It's just a fancy way of saying, let's pump some juice into this economy. Now, have you ever wondered how much the UK government borrows? It's a bit like tracking your partner's need for chocolate. It varies from month to month. For instance, in January and July, when everyone's paying their tax bills, the government suddenly feels a lot richer, like they found a forgotten birthday card with cash in it. I absolutely love when that happens. To make sense of the madness, let's look at the whole year. In the last financial year, ending in March 2024, the UK borrowed a massive £120.7 billion. That's a lot of zeros. Although it's less than the previous year, it's still 6.6 billion more than the government's crystal ball predicted. Now the government's wallet is feeling a bit lighter. They borrowed 15 billion in May, which is 800 million more than last year. Think of a national debt as a crazy expensive bar tab. Right now, it's at a staggering £2.7 trillion. That's like buying every single product made in the UK in a year and politely saying, put it on my tab. And talking of tabs, could I ask that you hit the thumbs up button for me and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? Thank you very much. Now, our national debt has more than doubled since the 80s and the 2008 financial meltdown. From the financial crisis to the COVID pandemic, debt has shot up like a space rocket. But hey, compared to the last century and other top economies, we're still low on the debt list, so there is that. Now we need to keep in mind that the bigger the debt mountain, the more interest we have to pay. Back in the 2010s, when interest rates were lower, the extra cash wasn't that much. But now, with rising interest rates, it's like we're paying for caviar instead of haddock with our chips. Around a quarter of our debt is index linked, which means the payments dance to the tune of inflation. Prices go up, payments go up. Cheers, inflation! So more money used to pay off debt means less cash for public services. The very reason we borrowed in the first place. Oh, the irony. Oh, and wait for it. The interest payment hit a 20-year high in early October 2023. According to the Office for National Statistics, 2 months in 2022 were record breakers for debt interest. 20.2 billion in June and 18 billion in December. The latest shocker for May 2024 is still stinging us. So we need to see the UK debt like a roller coaster ride that we can't get off of. In March, the wizard, aka the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Jeremy Hunt, said, "Don't worry guys, we've got this debt under control." Your fortune tellers, known as the Office for Budget Responsibility or the OBR, predicts that by 2028 to 2029, our debt will shrink to 92.9% of our GDP, or what the whole country earns. The future's looking really bright, guys. Some smarty pants economists are freaking out, saying the UK is borrowing heaps of money at a scary price. They're like your mum yelling, "Stop buying stuff, you'll go broke." But others argue that borrowing is like buying a fancy blender. It costs a lot now, but helps makes more smoothies, aka money, later. They think this borrowing could boost the economy, leading to more tax revenue. I'm not sure how digging a bigger hole gets you out of it. What do I know? I'm just a simpleton. In the March budget, the Conservative government announced a cut in national insurance. Think of it like getting a discount off your subscription service. Now, this was obviously a ploy to get us to vote the Tories back in, but it was too little, too late. The OBR thinks borrowing will go up a smidge next year before chilling out and staying within the planned limits. But the OBR also warns that our debt could spin out of control as the population ages and fewer people pay taxes. In a country where everyone's getting older and a bit slower, there are fewer people working to pay those lovely taxes. So the government doesn't get enough dough, but still has to dish out big money for pensions. In March, the OBR, again the Office for Budget Responsibilities, did some crystal ball gazing. They said, hey, our debt compared to the size of our economy will keep going up over the next 4 years, but then, like a lazy cat, it'll slightly flop back down in the 5th year. Now, some crazy, brainy economists are saying, chill out UK, you can borrow a lot more, and it's not the end of the world. Imagine them as the cool friend who always says, put it on the credit, you can worry about it later. So what's this fuss about the government deficit and debt? Well, it's like this. Think of it as the government looking at its wallet, realising it's short of cash to pay the bills. That's the gap between what it earns and what it spends. Like when you go shopping and your budget is £50, but you realise you've racked up £75 in your basket. And surplus, this is when the government has extra cash after covering all of its expenses. It's like finding a £20 bill in your old jeans. And finally, debt. Now, debt is the collection of all those times the government had to borrow money because of past deficits. It's like a giant credit card bill that's just piled up over the years. There's a deficit, that bill grows. But when there's a surplus, we get to pay a bit of that bill off. So the next time someone throws around terms like deficit and debt, just imagine the government juggling a bunch of credit cards and occasionally finding some spare change in the couch cushions. So there you have it. Consider yourself updated on the UK's financial saga, full of thrills, plot twists, with a dash of humour. If you like this video, please consider watching one of my other videos here on the screen, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.